So big fella, I was thinking, and first of all, welcome to Heart of a Husker, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Vershan Jackson, three-time national champ, and I'm with a guy that is probably a big part of why us younger guys were able to emulate what you guys did.
You're not that much younger anymore.
Yeah, I am.
Back in like 93 to 97, you were younger. Now we're like you get older and all of a sudden we're all the same age. You got like the junior Clinton Childs look going now.
Can't help it, man. I guess it's because I'm a grandpa now, Rob.
Oh man, don't say that.
Yeah, four-time winner, baby.
There we go.
And I got little Hot Wheels Jackson is in the he's 7 months and he's already standing up and he's eating food and he's ready to go. 7 months. Look out, Coach Rule. 18 years. It'll be about 18 years it's gonna take you to win the championship, and we're gonna be the ones.
There we go. I'd take one before then.
How long do you realistically, Rob? Realistically, how long do you think it'll take to win a championship again? Realistically,
I mean, if you're talking like are you talking like a national title or
we're
just
talking natty? Yeah,
conference title? You're talking the whole shebang.
I'm talking the shebang.
Okay, so let's say we got the right guy. Okay. You look at what he did at Temple, you look at what he did at Baylor. And I mean, in Temple, he was there, 4 seasons? The last 2 seasons, he got 10 wins. Still, my understanding is 2 best seasons in Temple football history, which is actually kind of saying stuff because you go back and you look at some of the people who've played, like I think of like Paul Palmer, hell of a running back in the 1980s. I think he came out that same year Christian Okoye did, and they both got drafted by the Chiefs. Of course, Christian Okoye was the guy who ended up kind of literally carrying the load and became the star for the Chiefs. But Temple's had some great football players in their time period, and for him to come in and those 2 seasons were still the 2 best seasons in school history, I think that really kind of speaks to what he was able to accomplish at Temple. Then he goes and takes over Baylor, which was just talk about a reclamation project. That was, I don't know if people look at it in the same light as the whole Penn State Jerry Sandusky type of scandal, but I mean, it's on par with that. I mean, it was an absolute disaster. And I think people look at Baylor and they think, well, I mean, the year before that he took over at Baylor had an okay year. I don't remember their record, but I'm going to call it 500-esque. It was 500 give or take. And so everybody's like, well, he came in and then the very next year they only won 1 game. And it's like, yeah, but you got to understand, that was the year Baylor cleaned house. The year it was after that right after that previous season where the university came in and just completely cleaned house on athletes, staff, etc. And that's what Rule walked into, was the post-house cleaning situation at Baylor. So they had, I've seen different numbers, like 39, 40, 41 scholarship guys. I mean, he had less than 50% of a scholarship roster when he took over at Baylor.
Wow.
Those are just, abysmal numbers to have to come into to try and fill out a roster. And keep in mind, that was pre-transfer portal era. It's not like you could pull a Coach Prime, hit the transfer portal, and if you've got some NIL money, if you've got some hey, here's what we're doing level promises, pull a bunch of studs out of the portal. He didn't have that. I mean, he had to find what he could and piece it together. Now, it's not like you go down to the state of Texas. And I'm impressed with what the state of Nebraska is doing right now. But just from a population-based standpoint, Texas has like 20 Omahas within its border.
Right.
It's got numbers to deal with. So, I mean, you can do a rebuild pulling guys out of your backyard in Texas a heck of a lot easier than you can in a state like Nebraska. And so but still what Rule was able to do at Baylor that first year going 1-10, the fact that he won a game, I think, is a small miracle. He went basically, I think, a little over 500 in year 2, had like a 7-6-ish season in year 2, but was moving obviously in the right direction, and then went 11-3. And those 3 losses were 2 very close losses to a playoff-bound Oklahoma team, and then a close loss in the Sugar Bowl to Georgia. So if he goes 11-3 in year 3 at Nebraska, sorry, by the way, I'm giving you like the Rob Zatechka patented 10-minute answer to a 1-minute question.
Hey, I'm letting you go too, big fella.
So if he gets Nebraska in year 3 to akin to something to what he did at Baylor, where Nebraska goes 11-3, and I hate the term good losses, or I hate the term quality losses. But if we go 11-3 and those 3 losses are quality losses, i.e. 2 close losses to a playoff bound team, and then one of those losses was in the Big 12 title game to Oklahoma. And then your third loss is this 1-score loss to a team like Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Okay, number one, I'll take that. I mean, I'll be ecstatic with that. If he gets us 11-3 in year 3, I'm ecstatic. I think if he's in a situation kind of what he was building at Baylor, and if he's able to do the same thing at Nebraska, which you would think Nebraska's got reasonable resources to do that. When you look at Nebraska from an NIL's funding standpoint is top 20 in the country. It's amazing the amount of money that the state has and that they're willing to put towards that. And then, when you do the other thing I kind of go back to consistently, and this is something that I think has kind of kept Nebraska at least able to stay in sort of sleeping giant mode, is that when you look at some of these bigger business parameters that people look at, like national market share, national market recognition, brand recognition, social media engagement, those are measurables where Nebraska, for some reason, despite the quality of play that we've had here, with I'm going to say 3 out of the last 4 coaching regimes. I kind of give Bo a little bit of a break, but I mean, when you look at Callahan, Mike Riley, Scott Frost, when you look at the atrocious level of on-field performance for the bulk of those coaching regimes, the fact that Nebraska, when it comes to market share, brand recognition, social media engagement, still ranks between like 7th and 15th nationally in those parameters. And I'm going off numbers we've looked at for the Doc Talk Sports podcast. Those kinds of numbers, I mean, there's real value there. This isn't just saying like, hey, we had a great run in the early 70s and we had an awesome run in the early mid 90s. We're a blue blood still. That's not just a bunch of former players and fans giving lip service like that. Those are real numbers. Those are money generating numbers. And so when you look at what Rule's done before, when you look at those, I call it's the sleeping giant numbers. Those are things that I look at and say, like, year 4 to 6, year 5 to 7, in this day and age, with the transfer portal, with NIL, you can be a contender in 5 to 7 years easy, I think. Now, you've got to be able to turn that corner, too. I mean, you can't.
National?
What's that?
National?
Yeah. I'm not saying we are, but I'm saying.
In the perfect world, realistically, when you look at this, and I got a question, too, from the text line, but when you look at this, though, right? Is it a 10, 20 year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year to get back to the dance.
Yeah, I mean, well, and part of it is I think you look at when Nebraska last won a national title, and I look at this, and I'm talking when could they? I'm not saying when will they. Nobody knows the answer to that. I mean, look at Michigan, for God's sakes. There's a team that, when you talk about fan base, resources, recruiting, Michigan's a team that won a national title, like the 1930s, 1940s. And then it was literally 50, 60 years later, they sort of kind of tied you guys in 97 to get that AP share.
Right.
It's not the real trophy. It's that little wooden trophy that you get for the AP. You guys got the Sears. You got that thing carved out of granite and Tiffany crystal. But you got a team like Michigan. Michigan went, geez. There's a team that you talk about like should have. They went 60 years without a title. Your last one was 97. That was it as well, too. If you look at Michigan, you'd be like, why haven't they popped out another one? Look at Notre Dame. They went, I think, 2 decades, and then they got the one, remember Lou Holtz? You had Tony Rice at quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
You had Tim Brown at wide receiver. They punched out that title in 1988. You were in like middle school. I was in high school at the time.
But that was Rocket Ishmael and them, right?
The
Rocket
no,
there?
he was right after. Well, I think he was.
Rocket.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Rocket was on those. Yeah, Rocket was on those teams because they beat Colorado one year in the Orange Bowl, then lost to Colorado the following year. But yeah, Notre Dame had that title in '88. The last time Notre Dame's won a national title is 1988. I mean, Notre Dame. Yeah, Notre Dame. That's that team that has that cachet of being the greatest recruiting school in the history of college football. They got all those great recruiting classes. Why have they not won another national title since '88? I mean, that's 10 seasons longer than Nebraska's last national title. But there's a team who lives completely in that coulda, shoulda. So I mean, there's that coulda, could they or should they, will they? We can only operate in the could they or should they modes. So in the could Nebraska, 4 to 6, 5 to 7 years, Nebraska, I think, has the resources, the brand recognition, the social media engagement, the fan interest, and the dollars to do it. 4 to 6 years, 5 to 7 years, they're in position to do that. I mean, look at the transfer portal and some of these teams, some of the roster makeovers you're able to do. Now, I'm not saying like doing what Dion did at Colorado is the right way to do it. But I mean, I could say, I don't think he stays at Colorado, but if he did and puts down roots there, you can flip a roster and get that ball rolling in the direction you want it to roll really quickly in this day and age with the transfer portal. It's kind of what you've seen in basketball for the last 15 years, maybe even 20 years, going back to the really early 2000s, where you can get 1 to 3 transfers in a season, and all of a sudden you're a completely different basketball team. Mm-hmm. You can do that now to a degree in football. I don't think it's going to be that 1-year switch. Maybe if you've got like all the pieces in place and you're like LSU and you bring in a Joe Burrow. But even that took 2 years. I mean, you had who was it? Leonard Fournette at running back. Was that who was at running back?
Yep.
But you had a great offensive line. They were
great receivers.
You had 5 deep at receivers and in a defense that was hugely underrated. That was a great defense LSU had. It still took 2 years with Joe Burrow. I mean, he transferred, had an okay first year at LSU. I mean, I say okay, it was pretty damn good, but it wasn't like anybody was looking at LSU and going, "Oh my God, these guys are going to just are going to go down as one of the top 10 college
Mhm.
football teams of all time, just blistering people with that NFL roster that they had that year. It still took 2 seasons for Burrow to get that turned around and do what they did. So
Good.
it's but you can but that being said, that's a hugely quick turnaround. I mean, it used to be the dogma was to just kind of get from kind of a not very good or mediocre team to a great team. It used to be you needed 5 years. That was always the kind of the dogma. You got to have 5 years. You got to give them 5 years to get this turnaround. Now, man, you get the right guy, you can knock this out in 1 or 2 seasons.
Well, I sure hope so. Question for you, Rob, from the text line, from the Allo text line. How much can the offensive line actually improve this year? What are reasonable expectations?
That's a good question. Um, it's going to be hard until you see those pieces of the puzzle line up. And I say that because you had some massive question marks last season. Um, if Teddy Prohaska comes back and he's healthy, and if Teddy can stay healthy for a full season, that's the thing with him. I mean, he probably came back too quick from that ACL tear. Now, he's a tough kid and wants to play. He wanted to be out there on the field. But, I mean, he kind of injures the other knee that he had shoulder surgery. I mean, he's got to get his body right. If he comes back, if Teddy's healthy, that's a game changer because when he was healthy, true freshman, he was the best offensive lineman outside of Cam Jurgens on
Rob,
the team.
let me interrupt you real quick because I talked about this a couple months ago, and I want to ask you: do you remember getting hurt at Nebraska and
We
sitting
weren't
out a
allowed.
game?
We weren't allowed.
I don't remember ever being hurt where I sat out a game.
Yeah, it didn't. Well, I remember my junior year, Corey Schlesinger just barreled into the back of my leg on a play when I was locked up with one of the D linemen from Colorado,
I remember that.
and just obliterated my ankle. And I wanted to be able to start that next week's game. We were playing at Kansas. And Kansas that was kind of Glenn Mason era. They had some good ball players. They had Dana Stubblefield and Gilbert Brown and June Henley and Kwame Laster. They had a handful of NFL guys roll through there under Glenn Mason in the early 90s. And so I wanted to start that next game. And I remember I basically kind of, I don't want to say made, but I kind of made the training staff. They did the spat taping where they tape your ankle. I guess that's not spatting's on the outside of the shoe, but they taped my ankle, put my shoe on. They spatted the shoe, and then they fiberglass casted the whole thing.
Dang.
So they did a full fiberglass cast on it, and I went out and played the game with a fiberglass, and then they taped over the outside of that so you couldn't see the fiberglass
What?
cast. It looked huge. I mean, have you seen the guys? They break their wrist. They do that big padded club thing on your hand.
Yeah.
My foot and ankle looked like that.
Wow.
But it was a fiberglass cast underneath there. So I went out and played that game against Kansas with a fiberglass cast on the ankle just so I could play the whole game.
What do you attest to? Not very many people that I've ever talked to for the most part on this show. And I've talked to countless people, white, black, all kind of people that ever played football at Nebraska. I don't recall them saying, what do you attest to not getting injured? What do you attest that to?
And okay, so 2 things. I mean, one, I think a lot. I mean, reality is we got hurt. I mean, we had injuries. I played with a shoulder injury my sophomore year that I picked up at K-State. I remember like Kenny Malin I think it was the 93 season. He had a broken thumb. He was trying to play center and guard the whole year with a broken, there was about 6-8 weeks there. He had a broken thumb, broken hand. Sty fractured his ankle that same year, our junior year, against Missouri. And it was a bad fracture. I remember a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, just finally had got the plates, pins, screws all taken out of that ankle. But he had a really bad ankle. Here's how bad it is. It's called a Liz Frank fracture, and it's named after a Napoleonic Wars era French surgeon. This guy, like late 1700s, early 1800s.
Right.
But it was a type of fracture that was so severe. Like cavalrymen, knights, and Napoleonic War era cavalrymen, when you got knocked out of your saddle and your foot would get caught in the stirrup, it'd snap the bones in the middle of the foot and then dislocate those broken bones. His own prescription of treatment for this type of fracture is amputation. That's how bad a fracture it is.
Wow.
That they used to just say, screw it, we can't fix this. We're just amputating. Sty had that type of fracture. Now, obviously, in this day and age, you fix it. But that's how bad a fracture Sty had. He had the surgery, got it fixed. That was the Missouri game, which would have been game 5, 6, 6 or 7. Well, would have been game 5 or 6 during the regular season. It was usually the first or second conference game of the year. He came back for the bowl game. Sty played in the bowl game that year. It was this accountability to your teammates. You played hurt.
Period. You heard it from the big fella. I'm with Rob Zadiska. I'm the captain. Heart of a Husker. We'll be right back.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Hey, you got any gum?
Yeah, check my backpack.
What's this?
Oh, that's naloxone. It can reverse an opioid overdose. I decided to always keep it on me after my friend almost died. It saved his life.
I'm so sorry. That makes me want to have it with me too.
You totally should. Check the pharmacy. It was actually really easy to get, and it's easy to use.
I definitely will. Thanks.
Paid for by the CDC. Sponsored by Nebraska DHHS. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
The Butchery by Venue is Lincoln's premier specialty grocers. Take the quality of Venue home with you with our hand-cut steaks, handcrafted burgers, and locally sourced offerings. Browse our wide selection of specialty products designed to enhance your dining experiences. with cheeses, spices, sauces, and more. We also have an exclusive collection of liquors, whiskeys, and bourbons at prices you're sure to love. Stop in to the Butchery by Venue today, located in our Venue at Home storefront at 70th and Pioneers, just 2 doors down from Venue Restaurant and Lounge.
Hey, moms and dads, bring the whole crew to a Salt Dogs baseball game and unleash the fun. Visit Haymarket Park all summer for fireworks Fridays, souvenir Saturdays, Sunday family fun days, and more. With 50 home games, even weekdays can be unforgettable. Planning an event? Make it a home run with group discounts. When you need an outing the whole family will enjoy, unleash the fun with the Salt Dogs. Call 402-474-2255 or visit saltdogs.com for tickets.
Old School with DP and J.
As long as it's taken for him to build up that program to be pretty successful by their standards and look, pretty successful by Big Ten West standards, you have to take that into accountability. You can't be an impulsive, in-the-moment type of decision maker, because how you handle Pat Fitzgerald could stymie you from hiring, because those coaches talk.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Back to The Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, we are back. Heart of a Husker, myself, Vershan Jackson, and the big fella, Rob Zadiska. Rob, I got to ask you, because I want to get into this a little bit. Fitzgerald out at Northwestern.
Man.
Did you get a chance to read up on some of this stuff?
This is nuts. I mean, it's not like, I'm going to call it hijinks happen everywhere and at all times.
Right.
So it was interesting to me because I was having this conversation with Joel Wilkes. That was just yesterday. I mean, like 99.99% of anything I saw, it was veterans pranking each other. I mean, some of the stuff, I mean, like that the D-line would do to the O-line and vice versa, I mean, could be just brutal. I mean, we were meaner than hell to each other. But, I mean, it was like Terry Keneally to me to Terry Keneally kind of stuff. It wasn't like us getting together and like, hey, this one freshman, we're going to go mess this dude up.
Right.
That's the thing that cracks me up about it. It was guys, I mean, you didn't mess with the guy unless they were a year or two into the program and you kind of considered them a peer. Does that make sense? And I know, and I'm not saying we were bullying each other. It wasn't that. It was just one of those dudes would mess with each other left and right nonstop the whole time we were down there. And that was the kind of thing. I mean, that stuff was fun. I mean, and it was interesting because I look at it, I feel bad because I've always had a lot of respect for Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. And it always seemed like, man, here's a guy kind of old school, run stuff the way things you figured it would be run at Nebraska back in the 80s or whatever. And then you see this kind of stuff going on, and I'm sitting here going like, you know, not to be overly vulgar about it, but we didn't have like a dozen naked dudes dry humping another dude. I don't. Can I say that on this? But that's the kind of stuff they're talking about, and it's just that's weird to me. I mean, it's one of those.
So let me ask you a question.
We had guys who messed with each other big time, but you had this top-down culture within the program that said, yeah, you don't muck with the younger guys. You leave the freshmen alone. You want to prank somebody, go after somebody your own size.
Right.
And it was interesting because I got drafted by the Giants. Very similar philosophy, this top-down conservative leadership that there's some stuff you just don't do. And so it's kind of this completely unwritten rule, but very well understood rule when I went to the Giants, that you didn't mess with the rookies. And you could do kind of some fun stuff. I mean, there was stuff like first week at training camp, the rookies would have to stand up on the table and sing a song before you ate dinner at training camp, which I stood up and sang Madonna's Like a Virgin.
Let me hear it.
No. Horrible. Horrendous. I mean, I'm up there, this drawl, deep, monotone voice belting out Madonna's Like a Virgin. Oh my God. I got booed off the table so fast. And it was, you are never, ever doing this again. One of my teammates, Brian Sachs, he was a Boston College kid, big tight end out of New Jersey, played for BC, played for the Giants, played for the Falcons. Brian's this classic New Jersey dude, home of Frank Sinatra. He gets up there, first week rookie training camp. He belts out Sinatra's "I Did It My Way." I guess it's just "My Way," whatever. But and he nails it. I mean, he sounds the part. Wow. It was beautiful. Guess who had to sing every night for the rest of training camp?
Sinatra.
And here's the thing. It wasn't because they were trying to like haze the dude. It was like, oh my God, this guy can sing. And he's got a great Sinatra. He's giving us Sinatra every night at dinner now. And it was awesome. But that's what constituted hazing for the New York Giants, was Brian Saxon getting up there and belting out Sinatra every night. It was outstanding. But I mean, now here's the thing with the Giants. If you were a veteran and you wanted to prank another veteran, guess what? Dude, no rules, baby.
Oh, all bets are off.
Oh, all bets off. It was brutal. I mean, just horrible stuff. Not in like a weird like
not
bring out the
way.
Yeah, not in the weird bring out the Gimp dungeon stuff from Pulp Fiction. But I mean, it was just like some of these pranks were just like, holy cow, how do people think this stuff up? This is genius. But it's just brutal stuff that vets would do to each other. Well, that's allowable because it's vets against vets. I mean, there's no power difference there.
Right.
It's a starting offensive lineman against a linebacker. And actually, honestly, we were the worst against each other. The O-line versus O-line stuff was amazing. Like the rest of the team was like, yeah, we don't want to mess with those guys.
Yeah, stay away from the ball.
It was like, look at the crap they're doing to each other, for God's sake. So
right, just get out of there. I want to read this though, because
my bottom line is, I don't know how it seems like this stuff was so rampant within the program that the head guy, A, wouldn't know, and B, if he did know, how do you not look at this and go, okay, this is going to get me and my staff fired, and we're going to crash and burn this program? That's how you got to think about this stuff in this day and age.
Do you think, though, that this was – because Fitz was a star there, right? Now –
Had to have done it.
That's what I'm saying. Way back when.
They're saying this stuff. So they said they've always done this stuff.
Absolutely. Now, let me read something. See how you would take this situation. There were also accusations of freshmen being forced to perform additional hazing acts while naked. Among them were so-called car wash, where a player would stand at the entrance of the team shower, facing others entering the shower to rub against them on the way in.
That's so freaking weird, dude.
What? Where does this fly?
It's just wrong. Well, here's the bottom line. Like I'm looking at this going like, I mean, I'm not trying to be overly funny here, but I mean, this is a program that's supposed to be sort of this staunch academic beacon of higher learning. This is Harvard.
Wait, Rob, hold on. Say that one more time. Staunch what?
So I don't even know what I just said. Like
beacon of hope.
Beacon of higher learning. I mean, this is the Big Ten Conference's Harvard. This is our Vanderbilt. I mean, every school, every conference has a school like a Vanderbilt, a Northwestern, like the old Southwest Conference. Now I don't even know what conference it is anymore. Rice University. I mean, and some of these, I mean, it's funny because you look at some of these schools like Northwestern and Ivy League schools that are looking at Nebraska and like, you guys put up these like academic All-American banners that you got more academic All-Americans than anybody else. It's like, what's freaking Nebraska? Like, it's easy to get a 4.0 in coloring within the lines. I mean, it's you pulled a 3.95 GPA in not eating paste. I mean, that's like what these places like Northwestern and Vanderbilt and Rice and Harvard are looking at Nebraska when we talk about academic All-Americans and making fun of us for this. And I'm looking at it going, okay, if this is what the academic standard bearers of the world are doing, I'm fine with my GPA at Nebraska, and I will take that every day. Because guess what? I didn't have to do a car wash to or get it done to me in my time at Nebraska. How's that?
Now, hey,
take your ivory tower academics and shove it, you know where.
Right. We're gonna throw it to break, but I want to throw this at you so you can be thinking about this, because this was another topic, right? So, what happens when you're part of the 8 holding the 1 down, and then the 1 goes for it, right? And he becomes an upperclassman. How much more does he want to do that to someone that, because he got it done to himself?
That's
right?
a good one.
Right after these messages, Heart of a Husker, me and the doctor, 4.0. Tell me, Nebraska, listen, I wasn't nowhere near close to a 4.0. So I do want to ask you that. How the heck
you didn't do the car wash either?
No, I didn't.
You were smart enough not to do that.
I'll take my 2.3, no car wash.
How was your drive to school?
Let me tell you, I had to get my iced coffee first. I just can't seem to put it down. My favorite rapper just announced a tour. My phone was buzzing like crazy. I'm so excited. I had to text all my friends right then to talk about it. Then someone started calling me and...
Let's try that again.
I turned my phone off right away. I never drive distracted.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and test us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
This is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hungered in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Hey guys, Jake Sorensen here from Early Break, and on behalf of the entire 93.7 The Ticket team, we are excited to announce this fall we are teaming up with Husker Extra for the Big Red Brunch. We'll have big names from now and the past from Husker sports, and that all starts on Wednesday, August 9th for the Big Red Brunch Golf Scramble at Tiburon Golf Club in Gretna. Sign up to play today at omaha.com and find the Big Red Brunch tab. You won't want to miss this on August 9th at Tiburon in Gretna.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here. I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to upgrade your combine? Don't wait. Act now to choose from the widest selection of used combines at Acres Equipment. Acres, the nation's largest John Deere combine dealer, is offering 2.9% interest for 60 months on over 100 pre-owned combines. Go to acres.com to view a huge inventory of low-hour, late-model John Deere combines. Find what you like, and we'll deliver it to your farm for free. Acres, solutions for every field.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
Typically, you kind of think of Nebraska as far as in-state recruiting as might not get the skill position players, but you can pepper in some offensive linemen and maybe a linebacker here and there. This class is led by its in-state skill position players now. I mean, you're thinking down the line, you could 3 or 4 years from now have Daniel Kalen lining up with Davon Holland, Isaiah McMorris, and now Carter Nelson. Those are all your skill positions.
Keeping the highly talented, highly ranked players that are in the state with you at the home state school is a step in the right direction.
Back to the Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
That's right. We are rolling on, man. I don't know why. We're going to have to extend this show to 2 hours because 1 hour is not enough. It's not. We're just now getting into the meat and potatoes, and we got one segment left. So I asked you that question just because this is going to be news for the next week. For the next week, it's going to be news. Yeah. So did they create predators by doing that?
I think in situations like that, I think two things happen. I think one, you like what you said, you create that predatory mindset. And I think, I don't know what statistically, if it's 50-50, 20-80, whatever, but I think a big chunk of the guys that go through that are 100% going to perpetuate it moving forward. I think the other thing that happens is you probably have a group of guys that pushes it way in the opposite direction and kind of push back against it and are like, yeah, I'm never doing this stuff again. There's probably a middle ground group that is sort of like, yeah, I'm not taking part. I'm not going to stop it either, though. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. But I mean,
that wouldn't have flew in our locker room, though, Rob. You know that.
Oh,
that wouldn't have flew in our locker room.
The thing is, though, God, we liked each other. I mean, I like those dudes over on defense. I like the guys lining up in the backfield. I mean, I like the wide receivers. I mean, it's like we liked each other a lot. And I mean, the guys on defense, I mean, there's still guys on that defense that I keep in touch with. It's not like the team was super divided ideologically across the board here. But if you got a team that's going to line up with each other and say, like when we went out there on offense, I mean, we were thinking it's like, hey, the defense is busting their ass. We got to last week we talked about accountability. It keeps coming up. So we got to be accountable to those guys on defense. We got to be accountable to those guys we're lining up next to. We got to be you want people to be accountable to you, but you want to be accountable to them as well too. If you've got a culture that it appears like Northwestern has, how are those guys accountable to each other? Wow. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like if somebody puts me through that and I get in a situation, I get in a football game, I'm dead tired, I'm hurting, maybe I'm injured. I'm going to, like, if somebody's done that to me, you think I'm going to go out there and be like, yeah, I'm going to go do this for that guy. Yeah, no,
Right.
screw that guy.
Right.
Forget him. You know what? That effort dial's coming down. You know what? Forget this. I just want to get my butt off the field. Let me get my bag lunch going on to the plane and let's go home. I got a test next week I got to study for. Forget these dudes. You know, I mean, I'm not trying to brag about the ankle injury and fight, like literally put my foot in a cast so I could go play a football game, or things like what Sty did, where he literally was playing in that Orange Bowl game against Florida State for the national title with an ankle that was still essentially fractured.
Wow.
He was willing to do that because there was that sense of accountability to everybody else on the team. I put a cast on my foot because there was an accountability to everybody else. That accountability had more power than that injury did to keep you off the field. That's where strength comes from. That's where team comes from, is that. I mean, somebody puts me through that.
Yeah.
When you look at that type of culture where that can exist, do you really think somebody who's injured, somebody who's hurt is going to say, forget it? I'm going to go out there and put it all on the line because I'm going to be accountable to that guy. It's like, hell no. That level of accountability cannot exist in that type of culture.
At all. Bruce Moore.
Hell of a D tackle.
Yeah, what?
Of course, Bruce was also like 6'9". I think he was the tallest human being on the planet.
Right. Talk to me about Bruce Moore. Bruce Moore is going to be on the show, on the Captain Show from 10 to 12 Thursday.
Oh, good. I love Bruce. So, I mean, I had to butt heads with that guy in practice for a couple of years. Bruce was, I think he was a senior when I was a sophomore, which I will say this, like, fifth nicest human being on the planet. Although I kind of say that about everybody except, I don't know, maybe like Christian. Christian was like the 117th nicest person on the planet. But man, that guy, he was hard. God, that guy was hard to block. We had a handful of defensive linemen in that era that Bruce is one of those guys that would have been like a 2-year starter at most Power 5 programs. And he comes to Nebraska and like gets to hang out with guys like John Perella.
Right.
So, super tough guy to block. And the reason is, I mean, I cracked the joke about his height. I mean, he was probably a pretty legit 6'7", 6'8", maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Long arms, long legs. And man, he got his hands on you, is game over. Because I'm pretty tall. I'm about 6'5". I got fairly long arms for even somebody who's 6'5". Bruce got his hands on you, and I'm trying to reach out and grab him, and it's like he just keep at arm's length, scooch down the line and make the tackle. It's just like, God, I hate that guy.
Well, I had to deal with Bruce too at that defensive end spot when I was on scout team. So it's gonna be
that would be mean, like coming from like, because you were sort of this almost like this hybrid position where it was sort of the fullback, H-back, tight end position. I mean, you kind of had those guys. You had to have the tight ends who could run and move. And I mean, it's always you had the tight end who could run and move, and you had the tight end who was the offensive tackle. Yeah. Like the guy in my class that fit your shoes, that was Eric Alford. He was the guy who could run, could catch the ball, and but I mean, yeah, it's like
Shaw was the blocker.
Yeah, exactly. He was the third offensive tackle.
Will Washington.
Oh, so I always felt bad because Will was always like, he goes, man, they made me a tight end. He goes, they should have made me an offensive tackle. He goes, if I was an offensive tackle, I would have been in the league. But no, They made me a tight end and made me go run and catch the ball, stuff offensive linemen. we're listening to Will bitch and moan about that. And we're sitting here going like, you realize we all want to be in your shoes right now. You got Chris Garrett and Will Washington, and we're sitting there going like, yeah, we all want to be you guys. We want to be out there catching the rock and running past patterns.
Johnny Mitchell.
Oh, you know what? Somebody, it was kind of floating around on Twitter this week. I think it's Big Game Boomer. He's an Oklahoma guy, but he does like a lot of general college football stuff. He posted a list of his top 10 athletes of all time. And it's like Jordan, Woods, Ali, and so on and so forth. I would probably argue that in terms of sheer athletic ability, Johnny Mitchell might have been up there with Bo Jackson.
Wow.
I'm not kidding you.
I've heard that.
He was, oh my God, just mind-blowingly amazing. His problem was, I think it was just he came out, so that was back, remember the old Prop 48?
Yeah.
That was back in the era where, and what it was sort of the eligibility rules that you could enroll in school. You could be on the team, you could work out with the team, you just couldn't play. And so a number of guys would do that. And it was a stupid rule, dumbest rule on the planet. I hated it. But guys finally figured out like the loophole to get around it is you just sat out of here. You didn't enroll in school, or you'd enroll but only take minimal class hours. You'd only take 1 or 2 classes. You weren't a full-time student. Then you wouldn't burn a year of eligibility. Because if you did the Prop 48 year, you'd lose a year of eligibility. Well, and what guys would do is they'd take some classes, and then they'd just kind of take their time, study up, go take the ACT, eventually pass it. And so that's what guys like Johnny did that. Kevin Raymakers did that. Derek Brown at running back, another freaker athlete.
Derek Homage.
Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, Johnny did that. So he sat out a year. So after his second season at Nebraska, technically he was 3 years out of high school. And so he was eligible for the NFL draft. And so he went pro after his sophomore year at Nebraska. So he played as a quote unquote true freshman, true sophomore, went pro. There was sort of a gap year in there that he took as that loophole around Prop 48. And it was the smartest thing ever. But it was just, he just didn't have enough experience. Yeah. He just needed
another year.
He just needed another year hanging out with dudes and doing the college thing. And he got to the NFL, and I think he just got like getting out there, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, I got to get an apartment for myself, and I got to pay bills and pay taxes and all this stuff. And but yeah. Oh my God, might have been the best athlete I've ever met.
Could you imagine, Rob? We got to get ready to get out of here, but could you imagine him on that 1993 team? Because he would have been there for 93 if he had stayed. But
although I will say this, we had Tremaine Bell.
Yeah, Daryl Armstrong.
Dude, you had Daryl, the Ponca Flash.
Yes.
Dude, I mean, Tremaine, you got the ball within. Tremaine was one of those guys. You got the ball within like 7 feet of him, he was going to catch it.
That's why we called him Tree.
Yeah, and Armstrong was one of those guys. He'd like every year he'd catch like 7 passes, and 5 of them would be for touchdowns.
Just the sneaky legend, man. Well, listen, man, July 22nd, Norfolk, Nebraska. The pipeline, the original pipeline, will be given.
Warhorse Event Center.
You think that these stories are going good? You ain't seen nothing.
This is all we're doing is telling stories. We'll take questions. We'll tell stories.
All right, Rob, give us something before you go. Talk to him a little bit. Give me 30 seconds of Robisms for the people to live by.
Here's my Robism. I think I'm going to go back to the Northwestern thing. I'm going to go back to the Nebraska thing because it's kind of something. You're right. It's going to be in the news for the next couple of days. if you're a Nebraska fan, be happy with where the culture's at, because there's always been that aspect here where there's some stuff you don't do because it's not the right thing to do, and I've always appreciated that about this place, and that's something I've always loved about it.
Listen,
there you go.
Appreciate you, Big Rob.
Exactly. Hey, good to talk with you again. We're going to be hanging out in person here in a couple weeks, buddy.
Yeah, well, I'll see you next Monday. Can we gonna try to
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm kidnapping you, Rob. Hey,
I'm still pretty big.
Hey, I know, but
I'm like a svelte 280. You're going to need a pretty big trunk to get me in.
We're Nebraska, and they're still Kansas.
There you go. 100%.
See you next week.